Hello everyone, I hope you all are having a great Thursday so far. In today's forecast, we're going to be talking about our severe weather risk over the next several days and the potential for a severe weather outbreak tomorrow on Friday. But first, we'll start off with today's severe weather outlook. For today's severe weather risk, we do have a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk in two portions of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Around that is a level 2 out of 5 slight risk in the yellow color, well up here into portions of the Great Lakes states, up into the Mid-South, and further east to the Mid-Atlantic as well. And then all around those risks, we do have a level 1 out of 5 marginal risk in the dark green color once again for today. Along with today's risk, we also have a tornado risk, and we do have a hatch risk into some of these areas, into Wisconsin, into Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and a small portion of Minnesota. Damaging winds will also be a threat today with a 30% area and another hatch risk into Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio for today for our damaging wind threat. And then finally, we also have a threat of severe hail into quite a bit of the Great Lakes states up into portions of the Ohio Valley as well, and then into portions of the Mid-Atlantic once again for today. So looking here on the NAM weather model, looking at our mid-level flow. And so if we go to midday today, you can see our trough up here into the north central U.S. And we have a very broad area of mid-level flow, especially across the central U.S. And so that'll deliver our severe weather threat for today. And once again, as you can see, our trough way up here. And with this flow further to the south, we almost have kind of a split flow event for Friday, where we have a broad area of flow, but this flow, as you can kind of tell, can splits kind of in half, you could say. And so you'll have amplified mid-level flow across the Ohio Valley tomorrow on Friday, and we'll get to tomorrow's severe weather threat in just a moment, but we'll discuss Thursdays in a little bit more detail today, and you continue that forward as well. Getting into Friday night into early on Saturday morning, you still have a broad area of flow as you go into the eastern U.S. and Ohio Valley on Saturday, and you'll get another severe weather risk as well. And then continuing that forward here, even going into Sunday, you can start to see our other main threats early next week. Our other main trough start to move in, and so this is as far as it goes on the 12Z NAM, but that'll be our main threat, our main topic next week, as we have this pretty major trough start to move in slowly into the southwestern U.S., and that should once again deliver another severe weather threat across the central U.S. sometime early next week. Now looking at the HRRR model for today, and already by about 3 p.m. Central Daylight Time, you have storms beginning to form and develop all the way up here into Minnesota and even Wisconsin. And so once again, these will have the potential to produce some large hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes as you go into the evening hours today on Thursday. And then continuing that on even further as you get into tonight, 9 p.m. Central Daylight Time, you can see a pretty long stretched area of storms, and that will once again be able to produce damaging winds. Potential for large hail and tornadoes will continue as that line moves it to the east. And so even as you get into 8 p.m. tonight, you could still see some more isolated development out here into Illinois, and then even into Indiana by late tonight. But mainly today, this will be our main area to watch up here into Wisconsin and Minnesota. And so that will continue on once again, and then that would bring us to Friday. But still, even into the overnight hours tonight into tomorrow, I would still continue to be weather aware, especially with this long line of storms as it moves to the east, and you almost have a kind of an MCS develop there on the HRRR, kind of into Michigan and even northern Ohio, maybe late tonight into early tomorrow on Friday. So just continue to watch that. And also by about 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, you could start to see some development of storms out here into the Mid-Atlantic, specifically into Virginia and maybe even West Virginia, possibly into northern North Carolina. But most of those storms should stay kind of isolated, and really by about maybe midnight or 1 a.m. tomorrow, most of those storms should be completely out of those areas. And so if we also look at our instability here, we'll look at our surface-based CAPE. And so you'll have plenty of instability into these areas. And so there will be probably a cap in the atmosphere limiting storm development to begin with, but you'll have plenty of forcing into these areas, and storms will be able to overcome that cap and basically explode with development, especially out here into Wisconsin and even Minnesota, and then further to the south as well, even into Illinois. You could see some pretty explosive development if you have some of those storms overcome that cap, and you'll have a severe weather threat on your hands with most of these storms that develop out here into Illinois and even Indiana as well. And still, you have plenty of instability as you get into tonight, and maybe that instability could potentially help some of those storms out in front of that MCS. So continue to watch that as well. But that'll be it for the discussion of today's threat on Thursday. Then for tomorrow on Friday, we have a level 4 out of 5 moderate risk of severe weather issued into Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, even into Missouri as well. Once again, for tomorrow, a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk is around that as well in the orange color. And then around that is a level 2 out of 5 slight risk in the yellow color. And then finally, we have a level 1 out of 5 risk for severe weather in the dark green color. And that is that entire marginal risk there in the dark green color. But that'll be tomorrow's severe weather threat. We already have a 10% hatch risk for tornadoes tomorrow into the Ohio Valley and Mid-South. And the hatched area means a 10% or greater probability of significant tornadoes occurring within this area, with the dashed lines, the black dashed lines, or hatched lines, you could say. And so around that is a 5% tornado risk in the brown color, and also a 2% tornado risk in the green color for tomorrow on Friday. There will also be a pretty high threat for damaging winds tomorrow, especially if an MCS is able to develop, which it probably will, across some of these areas tomorrow on Friday. So that's why we do have a 45% wind risk along with a hatch risk, and that hatch risk is over the entire 45% wind risk, along with that 30% wind risk in the red color. And then finally, looking at our severe hail outlook, and so we have a 30% risk of large hail and also a hatch risk around that, around the quite a bit of the 30% risk, and then we have a 15% risk in the yellow color and a 5% risk in the brown color. And so what the hatched area means is a 10% probability of significant hail, which is, as you can see down here, 2 inches or greater in diameter for tomorrow. So that is once again the areas that are in that hatched risk, and that's what that means for tomorrow. So now looking at the ARRR model for tomorrow on Friday, and even by tomorrow morning, you could see some leftover energy and some storms lingering around into maybe Tennessee or Kentucky by tomorrow morning, but those should quickly move out. But by the early afternoon hours, you could already see some development, maybe some isolated development of storms into Missouri, continuing that on even further. Plenty of development of storms out here into Kentucky, Illinois, Missouri, even into Indiana as well. And once again, these storms will have the potential to produce large hail, tornadoes, and damaging winds. And as you get into tomorrow evening, more development is anticipated from the ARRR out here into Missouri, even into Arkansas as well. And really by tomorrow evening into tomorrow night, you could see kind of this lead line of storms into Ohio, Kentucky, maybe even West Virginia, but still looking further to the west into Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas. That's where we could see a pretty quick development of a line, and that would probably turn into kind of an MCS here as you go into late tomorrow night, and that would definitely have the chance to produce damaging winds, still tornadoes and hail as that moves to the east. So continue to watch that, especially as you get into tomorrow evening, because these storms could develop rather quickly because they're in such an unstable environment. And continuing that on even further, going into late tomorrow night into even early on Saturday, that kind of MCS would sag to the south and still impact Tennessee, West Virginia, Kentucky, even into northern Alabama, Mississippi as well, and then even into Arkansas as you get further into the night and early on Saturday. But now looking at the 3 kilometer NAM to see what it has to show. So if we go to early Friday morning, still with the same thing here. Some maybe isolated development early in the morning, but that would quickly dissipate. And then if you look by about the early, kind of early afternoon hours into the evening hours, you could start to see some maybe isolated development on the 3 kilometer NAM. But the NAM actually does not have as much widespread development as the IRRR. So continuing that on even further, the NAM actually does not get much going until later tomorrow evening. So that'll be something to consider as well and watch. Honestly, if these storms are a little bit more isolated, that would probably lead to a greater severe weather risk, especially with storms kind of like these, even into Illinois, Arkansas as well, maybe Tennessee. If that were to stay isolated, those storms will be able to basically take advantage of that environment a little bit better rather than a long line of storms, if that makes sense. But continuing that on, still you could see a kind of an MCS, a line of storms move into Tennessee maybe late tomorrow night into early on Saturday. So watch that as well, and that will continue on, but eventually weaken by Saturday morning. So now we'll look back at the IRRR. So we're staying on the 12Z run, and if we look at our instability here, we'll look at our mixed layer cape, and once again you'll have plenty of instability for tomorrow. And as you get into midday tomorrow, the IRRR wants to show well over 4,000 joules per kilogram of mixed layer cape into Missouri, southern Illinois, even into western Kentucky, and that is plenty enough instability for these areas. And finally, looking at our severe weather threat for Saturday, and so we do have 2 slot risk, level 2 out of 5, and that is into kind of the mid-Atlantic and into the south central U.S., into Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and then up here into the mid-Atlantic, all the way from southeastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, all the way to the south, into eastern North Carolina, and a small section of South Carolina right there. So that is going to be our day 3 severe weather risk on Saturday. Then for Sunday, we already have a level 2 out of 5 slight risk issued into portions of the central U.S. for Sunday, and so the Storm Prediction Center has already highlighted this area because confidence is high that another severe weather threat will appear Sunday. On Monday as well, we already have a level 2 out of 5 slight risk issued into the central U.S. once again for May 19th. And so the Storm Prediction Center is once again confident in another severe weather threat for this day. Then on Tuesday, once again, we have another slight risk for May 20th. And so the Storm Prediction Center is confident once again, and that area kind of shifts to the east into portions of the Mid-South, still in the portions of the central U.S., and that'll be for Tuesday, May 20th. Now, finally, looking at the GFS for these upcoming days this weekend, and so for Saturday, you'll probably have plenty of surface-based instability out here into the south central U.S. and eastern U.S. Then moving into Sunday, and then Monday. But Sunday, once again, the GFS shows plenty of instability out here into the central U.S., and then going into Monday as well, another day of plenty of surface-based instability showing up on the GFS weather model. And then even into Tuesday as well, that would have an area of at least moderate instability for the GFS. And even into Wednesday, could see a little bit of instability out here into the southeastern U.S., but nothing too crazy. And after that, we'll have to continue to watch our pattern. But that'll be it for today's update. I appreciate all of y'all watching, and I hope y'all stay safe, especially tomorrow if you live in any of those areas that will be impacted by severe weather.